We are the weirdos, mister.
Welcome back to the Final Ghouls of Horror. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Holly.
And I'm Elle.
We're three people who love horror and are coming at it from different perspectives of who we are, as well as very different levels of experience with the genre, which we're always excited to talk about. And this week, we're concluding our look at the Fear Street Trilogy with Fear Street 1666.
We can end the curse. For Shady Side. What the hell?
You see it now.
Sarah!
The devil has come to feast on our misdeeds. And his darkness grows within each of us.
Sarah Fear, you know nothing good comes from those woods after sundown.
What was that?
So, we're two films into this trilogy at this point, and I would say this one does quite the left turn, which was admittedly teased at the end of 1978. Do you guys remember what you were kind of expecting from 1666 at this point, the first time that you guys saw it? Elle, do you remember what you were hoping for, where you thought it was going to go?
I think I was expecting more of a twist, somewhat. I mean, I said in the previous episode that my belief was Nick Good was still doing the right thing, and it was his brother that was the responsible person in this time period this time around.
Right.
But having him do that is it feels like kind of the cop out. So I was in it for a bigger twist than, oh no, you the person you thought is good is actually evil, haha.
Right.
It's like it'd go like a step further type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Holly, what about you? Did you have anything that you were expecting to see at this point, or hopes, or kind of what was your mindset or expectation going into this that you can remember?
Well, the first thought going into this is, well, you can't rely on the music on this one.
That's true.
It's 1666.
Yep.
What, you're not a fan of ye old lute? Lute and fife?
Yeah.
But it wasn't the needle drops like the other movies.
No, not at all. I think for my part, first of all, I remember seeing that we're going back to 6066, and I was like, oh, what the fuck? Because it is, like I said, it is a left turn and a half. Honestly, I feel like I was concerned going into this because when you go bonkers like that ending to 1978 is and don't really explain it, I'm of two minds here. I am both very intrigued to see where this goes, and so many films try strange, mid-franchise twists that, sure, love the audacity, love the boldness, but I don't know how this is going to play out. That was kind of where I was at this. I think, I mean, and we'll get into this, I think it works very well for the most part. But yeah, I do remember being a little bit concerned about how this was going to go. Because also, when you're going back to, let's be frank, the Salem witch trials era, after what were two, for the most part, very fun horror movies, that's not an era I associate with fun. So I was a little bit worried about the tone shift.
What, mass paranoia and constant hangings isn't fun to you?
No, for some reason that doesn't quite do it for me in the fun factor. So for this week's episode, since we are concluding a trilogy that we already talked about the production notes with last episode, we're just going to jump right in a little bit. Couple content warnings for this one before we get into it. We have homophobia, because it is set in 1666. We have some violence towards animals and children, gore, eye mutilation, and what I can only kind of describe as borderline sexualized assault at a certain point when villagers are checking for marks on stuff. So that's what we have for Fear Street 1666 as far as sort of backstory stuff. Holly, tell us what this film's about.
All right. We pick up on Dina reuniting the severed hand of Sarah Fear with the rest of her corpse. She then has a vision showing her the events of 1666 from the perspective of Sarah Fear. She lives with her father George and her brother Henry in Union, the original settlement, before it was divided into Sunnyvale and Shadyside. One night, Sarah and her friends plan on having a party in the woods. A few of them meet a widow together, where Sarah then stumbles onto a book of black magic. The group then gathers in the woods and begins to dance and eat the berries. Sarah and Hannah are harassed by Caleb. They taunt him and run off into the woods and start kissing, unknowingly seen by Mad Thomas. The next day, Pastor Cyrus Miller begins to act strangely, as all the town's food and water are suddenly poisoned. Sarah confides in Solomon Good and wonders if she is responsible for the town's bad luck. The town then discovers that Pastor Miller has murdered 12 children in the chapel by removing their eyes, including Sarah's brother Henry. Sarah is attacked by Pastor Miller before he is killed by Solomon. That night, a town meeting is held at which the townspeople decide that witchcraft is the cause of the events, and Caleb claims that Sarah and Hannah are the witches responsible. Hannah is captured while Sarah escapes, and the town declares that Hannah will be executed at dawn. Sarah sneaks into the chapel, where Hannah is tied up, and the two profess their love. Sarah decides to retrieve the widow's book and use it to make a deal with the devil to save Hannah, but she discovers that the book is gone and the widow has been murdered. She flees to Solomon's house and hides after he is ambushed by men hunting her. While hiding, she finds tunnels under his house and discovers a ritual as well as the widow's book. Solomon reveals that he took the book to make a deal with the devil, offering Pastor Miller to be possessed in exchange for power and wealth. He offers to share it with her, but she rejects his offer, and a fight ensues, with Sarah's hand being cut off in the struggle. She escapes to the chapel only to be captured by Solomon and the townspeople. At her and Hannah's execution, Sarah convinces the town to spare Hannah's life by proclaiming that she is the witch and she controlled Hannah. She swears vengeance to Solomon before she is hanged. Later, her friends Lizzie, Isaac, Hannah, and Abigail grieve Sarah and move her body to properly bury her. We then shift back to 1994. Dina realizes that the Good family is responsible for the Shadyside curse, as the firstborn of each generation repeats the ritual begun by their ancestor Solomon. Because of this, Sunnyvale has always prospered, while Shadyside has become worse. Dina and Josh are found in the woods by Sheriff Nick Good, but the two escape in Nick's car and arrive at Ziggy's house. The trio decides they must kill Nick to end the Shadyside curse. After they recruit the help of Martin, the mall janitor, the group concocts a plan to lure Nick into the mall and sets up traps to have the Shadyside murderers kill him. The group manages to trap the killers, and Ziggy pours a bucket of Dina's blood over Nick, causing the killers to attack him. As Nick escapes into the tunnels, Dina and a possessed Sam follow him while the others fight off the killers. Sam attacks Dina, but she breaks Sam out of her possession temporarily before incapacitating her. Nick nearly kills Dina, but she exposes him to a pile of beating organs in the tunnel, which gives him the visions of all the killer's victims, causing him to go into a state of shock as the visions surround him. As he turns to flee, Dina kills Nick by stabbing him in the eye, causing the curse to cease and making the killers vanish. Sometime later, the Good family are exposed for their actions, while life begins to improve for the residents of Shadyside. Ziggy reunites with Mrs. Lane. Simon, Heather, and Kate are commemorated by the school, and Dina and Sam finally have a date at Sarah Fear's grave, naming her the first Shady Sider. In a mid-credit scene, an unknown person is seen taking the book that was left in the tunnels.
And that's Fear Street 1666
Slash 1994 Part 2.
slash 1994 Part 2. So 1666 obviously goes back in time. Elle, generally, how do you feel about period horror? It is a very specific setting that admittedly horror doesn't jump into a lot, because anybody who's involved in filmmaking will tell you period movies are expensive, and horror is a genre that is fairly well known for being the one that you can churn out without much cost. But we do have notable examples. So how do you vibe with period horror as a whole?
I think you've contradicted yourself a bit there, Jeremy.
Okay.
Last episode, you said that horror basically only does the 80s. And is the 80s not a period in time?
That is a fair point. Yes, 80s is period horror, but 80s is modern period horror.
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between something that happens to be set in a time period and something that could be representative of a time period. Like
Yes.
it depends on like how much you lean into those sort of vibes when you're building it.
Yep.
It's like theoretically Scream is a period piece set in what the 2000s, late 90s, but does it feel like it's set in that time period?
Look, I just can't call 80s and 90s films period horror because I have enough shit making me feel old as it is. But that is a fair point.
So, I mean, it would depend. Like, just making it in a different time is not the same as making it represent that time to me. So, it would depend on how they've approached it. If you make it more emblematic and representative of the time, I think I vibe with it more because there's more to play with and lean on rather than
Hmm.
making it more genericized, just homogenous type of period piece.
Absolutely fair. Holly, what about you? How do you feel about period horror as a whole? Are there any specific ones that you love or ones that don't work for you?
Oh, I love period horror. I love period anything. Period TV shows, movies,
Hmm.
actual time travel once I figure out how it works, all of that stuff. I love all of that. I was surprised that, they were going all the way back to 1666, especially with the other two
Right.
being in the 1900s. I was excited though because I love period horror. I think it works mostly, but I have some notes.
Right. Yeah, I am the same. I love period horror. I'm thinking of, obviously, yes, when it's done well. Production value is a key, obviously. Like, you can't do period horror and have it just, okay, we're going to go out into the woods so that we're away from any modern stuff. They're filming it and then a plane passes by overhead or something like that.
Right.
But things like The Witch is the obvious one and is an obvious inspiration here. As a very current example, Sinners, which came out just a month ago or so at the time of recording this, is a fantastic period horror piece. Stuff like Bram Stoker's Dracula, Crimson Peak, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, last year's Nosferatu. When it's done well, it is so immersive because it is transporting you to another time and another place, that it's a lot easier for me to get swept away than if I love modern horror too, but if it's, oh, look, here's another film set in New York City or Los Angeles or something like that. It's distinctive, it's different, and it helps the film stand out, which I think this one does. I do also have some notes here. But before we get into the period stuff, this film is basically two mini films combined into one. We've got 1666 and we have 1994 Part 2. So my question is, how well does that work for us? Elle, do you think doing this, putting this, admittedly, this is a bit of a longer film, I think, than the other two, but does this end up giving either side a short shrift for you?
Yes and no. It feels like they had about enough to work with for both the two parts,
Mm-hmm.
but that the temptation to stretch them out was easily there.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, a less competent director, let's say, would definitely make this a longer film to give each part more time. And it's like that would be the mistake. But at the same time, it also does give that feel of, well, I mean, there's probably a bit more we could do. Like even watching it, it's like, well, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you know, we've got everything set up. We could do a little, but there's not that much left to do.
Right. Yeah, no, that's legit. I feel like there are particularly I do feel like 1666 gets a little less character development than we could have gotten. I think there are things that Lee Janiak does to help with that. The casting of, which we'll get into a little bit more, but the casting of the actors we already know in sort of corresponding roles and relying on shorthand of films and just the genre that we're already aware of, we can lean on some of that stuff. But I was definitely, at the very least, surprised when I'm watching it the first time and the storyline seems to be pretty much over. And I look down, I'm like, we're 50 minutes into this 2 hour movie. What the hell else are they going to do? Sarah Fear is dead. Everything is where it is. And then all of a sudden, we get a scream, and then 1994, part two. And for probably the third time in this movie, I'm going, what the fuck? But I think it is mostly effective and mostly good. Like I said, I would have liked a little bit more on Sarah and Hannah, maybe, because I feel like that relationship, again, because we have the actors that we have playing these characters, we already have some kind of depth to their relationship because of Dina and Sam. But it does feel like they kind of rushed through that a tiny bit. And then the 1994 part isn't as bad for me, but it does also feel like there's a little bit of sprinting and a little bit of perhaps the easy wrapping up at the end. Not
Yeah.
huge dings against it, but yeah, it does feel like, particularly, it would have been kind of, honestly, I feel like in the last half, the killers get the worst of it in terms of, I wanted to see more of these 5, 6 killers just going at it, and both against each other, and perhaps that are protagonists a little bit. But these are minor nitpicks on my part. I do think it works overall. Holly, how about you? How do you feel about the splitting of it?
Okay, so I have two different views on this. First of all, I do think it worked.
Hmm.
I think it, for what they were trying to do, I think the split works because it is obvious that they did need to go back to that night because there were
Right.
only three films, so they had to wrap everything up. And the origin story helped it tie everything together. That said, I would argue that this could have been four movies.
Yes, I was kind of thinking the same. I don't know. Yeah, Elle's kind of right. I don't know. There'd be a temptation to expand it out, but I mean, I wouldn't have complained about 4 films, certainly.
If they had done this, though, I don't think that they should have used the same actors in the 1666.
Hmm.
It should be new actors. It
Yes.
should be the like you could do the whole going back and forth between the actual Sarah and Dina because she's viewing it through her eyes. But
Yes.
then, if it is its own movie, they need to be new actors. I understand on making it the same actors for what they did, and it worked for what they did.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think Dina, if you split that up into 2 movies, I think you have Kiana Madeira still playing Sarah because she is the eyes of the audience character.
Yeah,
And then everybody else is playing new characters. I agree. because at that point you don't have to really rely on that shorthand. And it is a neat trick. And that was a really good segue, by the way, because how do we feel about the casting of the 1994 and 1978 actors in the 1666 portion? Like I said, it does give us some shorthand. It does also require that the cast do some things that I think perhaps are not the most successful. Holly, what are your notes on this part? Because I know you know one of mine.
Some of them work and some of them don't,
Yep.
in my opinion. I'm wondering if we agree on who works and who doesn't. I feel like we might.
Yes, absolutely. The key for me is the accents. Like,
It needed to be more consistent.
it needed to be much more consistent. There are some good accents. I think Keanu Madeira's accent is like the middle baseline of the accents. It's solid. It's not the best, but it's good, probably because I mean she has to be in pretty much every frame of the 1666 portion. So if she couldn't do it, they had better had to have figured something out.
I would argue that if you can't get your whole cast to do a decent accent, just drop the accents.
Yes.
I know that's difficult, but the inconsistency is really what bothers me.
Yep. In most cases, I would agree. There is one film that I will give a pass on that, and that is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Everybody else in that movie is doing an accent except for Kevin Costner, who is playing Robin Hood in that movie. He is the lead character. It's fucking Kevin Costner and his Midwest.
He's doing the Kevin Costner.
He's doing Kevin Costner, and they tried to do it with him doing an accent. It was determined that that was perhaps not the best path, and so he just barrels through with his thing. Well, everybody around him, whether it's Morgan Freeman doing the vaguely Moorish accent, or Christian Slater and Alan Rickman's just doing his Alan Rickman voice, and
He doesn't need an accent. He's Alan Rickman.
but also his natural accent is the appropriate accent.
Yes.
But it works in a really weird way for that one because it's fucking Kevin Costner. Like, the thing we like about him is not that he's a chameleon that slips into every role Daniel Day-Lewis style. It's because he has that Midwestern, good old boy is not the right phrase for it, but good old boy charm. And if he's trying to do a very bad English accent, he loses that. So that's okay with me. Here, listen, poor Olivia Scott Welch, who plays Sam and Hannah. She's trying. She's trying so hard, and it's just not working. Which is unfortunate because I think she's giving a really good performance other than that.
I would agree. Yeah. She didn't bother me that much.
No. It's noticeable, but no. I think Ashley Zuckerman's as Solomon, I think is fine-ish. I don't think Benjamin Flores Jr., Henry slash Josh, is even really trying.
I don't think he put one on at all.
There's a couple moments where I hear slight notes in the early scenes.
Yeah, an attempt was made.
Yeah, briefly made, and then he just drops it, which I guess it's not the most drastic thing because they kill him off really early. They kill him and Sadie Sink, one of their best performers, but I get it, it's the storyline.
She was given nothing in this, by the way.
No, absolutely nothing in this particular thing. That's one. I love Sadie Sink. Obviously, she was phenomenal in 1978. She's great in Stranger Things. I don't know why she was cast as Constance, other than let's just keep with casting all the 1994 and 1978
Yeah.
actors. I don't think she needed to be cast in this role.
She's given like 2 lines, I think.
Yep, and then a good makeup job. But yeah, Elle, how does this work for you overall?
I think the casting of the 94 actors was good, but I don't think the 78 cast should have been there. going off how it's sort of presented.
Mm-hmm.
What I would have done is use some of the other extras from '94, like some of the Sunny Veilers, or like the nurse or like the janitor. Put them in instead, because if we're viewing it as Dina sort of having a hypnotic episode, it would make more sense for her to see faces she's familiar with, because she only heard a story really about Ziggy and Cindy and everything, and maybe that photo. But it's like realistically, yeah, she doesn't have any reference for what they really look like or sound like or anything. So if we're viewing it as a hallucination, then yeah, that doesn't make sense to me almost.
That is a really fair point. Yeah, she doesn't know, she wouldn't necessarily know all of these characters. So, yeah, true.
So, I mean, yeah, it would do like the actors who did a great job in 78 a bit of a disservice for not calling them back.
Right.
But it's that weird suspension of disbelief where it's like, okay, well, yes, it's like it's make believe, it's fiction, and even in this, it's even more so. But where there's some realism that we could work with, yeah, maybe it's a weird expectation of realism in the wrong way.
No, but I do think that's a good point because when I was first watching it, I was like, I was trying to figure out narratively how this was working. And I don't think there's supposed to be a narrative logistical explanation as to why Dina is seeing these characters the way they are. Obviously, some of them correspond. Hannah and Samantha, Nick, Solomon. I think some of these are definitely supposed to correspond, but I don't think that's necessarily the intent. Like, it's never
Yeah.
made explicit that Dina is seeing Nick when she sees Solomon, or that she's seeing Josh when she sees Henry. I think that's specifically for the audience.
Yeah, it's like even looking at herself, is it just in the reflections? Or, it's like looking at her own hands and it's like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't me, or whatever. Is like, how far does it go? Like, how deep on this? Is she like locked in syndrome and just along for the ride? Or is it, being compelled to act out the scene? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're not given these details, but some of it depends on how supernatural is it that it has gone.
Yeah, I think the assumption is that, yeah, she is just backseating this and she is just watching. There's no point where Dina's personality is fronting, basically.
Yeah, and then it's is the cast only for the audience? In which case, the like bringing back Sadie Sink, as you said, makes more sense, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, we're not going to show you an entire cast full of new randos because that's not going to mean anything to you. But that's who would be there for Sarah rather than Dina.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's one of these things that just gets me thinking in weird ways, and I know that's come up a couple of times on these.
Yeah, no, but that is an absolutely fair point. Yeah. So, moving on from that, let's talk about my favorite thing to talk about, themes. So, whereas I think, like I said, the other two films, there's definitely some thematic material explored in 1994 and 1978. This one, those ones are really more focusing, I think, on the horror and the, let's call it, the popcorn drive-in movie sort of tones and fun, essentially. 1666 goes into some themes pretty heavily. We're talking about, obviously, you're talking about the Salem witch trials, or, sorry, the Union witch trials.
Yep, totally different.
Totally different, absolutely different things. Sure. Um, but we're talking about notions of mass hysteria, themes about oppressive power structures, and specifically how they affect marginalized people. I think that these things are laid in pretty overtly, but also subtly at the same time. Because it's never hammering you over the head with it. How successful, Holly, how successful do you think the 1666 version is in presenting those themes, and how did they factor into how you were viewing that portion of the movie? Because it is a significant change from the tones of the previous two films.
Yeah, I think it's very well done. It's definitely. I mean, at points, I felt like I was just watching The Crucible.
Uh-huh.
So, I saw Goody whatever with the devil and all of that stuff.
Right.
So I thought they did a good job with that. The mass hysteria. I think like at one point when we were watching it, Shawnee was like, "Oh no, a lesbian! Everyone must run!" Like something like that on the mass hysteria.
Watch out, it's contagious.
Amazing.
Yeah, but because they thought that was ridiculous, and I'm like, yeah, but that's how it was back then, and yeah, I think it did work to build the town's hatred and paranoia of her.
Yep, for sure. Elle, how about you? How did the themes in this lay for you?
It's interesting that you said they were subtle, because I mean, while I would agree they're subtle, it's almost expected.
Uh-huh.
It's like if you did a thing about the 50s, it's like, well, woman, if my roast is not on the table by the time I get home, you'll have a beating. And it's like, yep,
Right.
that tracks. It's not good, but it tracks.
I love the voice you just did for that.
That was very much the newscaster from the 50s or 40s. I love it.
To be fair, I haven't tried like an Irish accent, otherwise I could have gotten a part in this too.
Listen, I probably have the worst Irish accent of anybody I've ever heard in my life. And again, no shade to the cast at all. I think Ollie and I were briefly talking about this before stream last night. I said, and no shade to community theater, but these some of those were community theater Irish accents.
We just went through this. We just had auditions for our summer show, and there was a part that's like a character part that needed like a Cockney accent,
Oh no.
and but it needed someone who can pull off a Cockney accent, and they were like making a list of all of the guys that could actually do it, which I think was like two,
Yep.
including Austin.
Out
So,
of
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
out
we-
of how
I mean,
many potentials?
Okay, well, like it had to be a guy. We don't have a ton of guys. Oh no, it was
Right.
3. That was the surprising part. But the kid was too young. We had an 11-year-old boy get up there and nail it, and everybody was like, "Wow, he did great." But he
But
can't
it cannot be
convincingly.
you.
He cannot. That's an 18+ part. You cannot convincingly play
it's
that
like,
part.
my God, you're amazing. You're our character choice. Is what I'd be saying if you were 3 years older. Next.
Right.
Oh no, he got a very good part for his age, but just not. He got an age appropriate part, not that
Yeah.
part. But yeah, no. Well, we had like not a ton of guys. I mean, I think it was probably like 8 or 9 guys that tried for it, and a couple of girls tried for it, but not a lot of people could do the voice. And we had like one guy that got up there and didn't even try to do the voice. And the entire character is lost without the voice.
Right.
So it was just so flat when he
Oh
went
my
for
God.
it.
Listen, I will be the first one to say, because you both know what my accents sound like. Accents are hard. So yeah, all respect in the world to people who can do it.
Yeah. I was very much holding back earlier, where it's like, look, Jeremy, all the love in the world, but I think it's a bit rich for you to be criticizing accent work.
Yeah, well,
And
if
it's
I
like,
was...
I'm like, no, I can't say that. It's probably rude, but I shouldn't.
No, fuck it, do it. But that said, I'm also not playing a major role in a Netflix film trilogy. So,
Not
Oh,
yet, but
okay,
not
so
yet.
this is where I say I have some bad news and reveal the Truman Show setup that we've had.
we're not supposed to tell them that yet.
I can't hold it back anymore.
We
I'm
haven't gotten to
tired
that
of living a
episode.
lie.
Amazing.
But yeah, so I think it was subtle enough that it was like, yes, these are perfectly adequate to include, even if they're wrong, because you're meant to acknowledge it later in life at least.
Right.
But it fits, and
Yeah.
it also made me weirdly uncomfortable because it's like, how much of this has actually changed, especially in recent years? Yeah, because
Yeah.
for example, as an Australian, I get a lot of news about things happening in, say, the United States. And a lot of it is, hey, write to your senator or call them. I'm like, they would not pick up my number.
Yep. I've
Like,
said it before. Kind of have that same notion because I live in Oregon. I adore all of my senators and congressmen, but calling them and saying, "Hey, you need to stick up for the progressive things," is like they're doing it. Like if I call, for example, I don't know, Tennessee senators, they won't listen to me, and they probably shouldn't because I am not one of their constituents. So yeah, that's a thing.
I took one of those like political alignment tests, like for shits and giggles, basically, because it's like, well, I'm not voting in the US election.
Right.
And I think I broke it because I was so far to the left wing that it was comparing Bernie Sanders and Hitler.
Oh my fucking god.
Like on the line graph, it's like they are right next to each other. You are over here on the left in comparison.
That's also like what Americans call liberal and left wing are generally center, right, and center for the rest of the world.
Hmm. And what we call the Liberal Party is your Republicans.
Yeah, that's where it all gets strange. But yeah.
Yeah, so seeing these themes at play and going, oh boy, there's people are people the whole time round, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I said it is subtle, they are very much there, but it's not the way that I would expect a series of, let's be honest, teen targeted. There are rated films, but these films were very much teen targeted. I would not expect a teen targeted slasher franchise, 3-in-1 slasher film, to really lay down. If they were going to tackle this stuff, it would be super in your face, and they would be doing stuff like, when you lay in the homophobia here, let's make sure we explicitly in the text connect that to this. That kind of stuff tends to be far less subtle and more almost exposition in a lot of horror films. Whereas I think this does a good job of presenting it within the context of the stories. And there is a point that where it does get very in your face with Dina's slash Sarah's speech. It's towards the end. So I believe it's when she's talking to Hannah. And it's talking about, it's basically kind of contextually expanding the hysteria and the oppression stuff towards their queer relationship into a much larger and expansive topic about marginalized people within the outcasts of shady side kind of notion that I think makes it a little bit more overt, but otherwise I think it does a really good job. And I'm not criticizing that particular speech. I think it is incredibly well delivered, and I legitimately got a little bit emotional at that. But the rest of it is presented more woven within the narrative without the need for doing any, for lack of a better way to put it, flag planting. And I think that both parts of it work because this is, for the most part, a really well written script that gives us generally pretty complete characters in half a movie and then manages to get us back for 1994 again. So I think it plays out for me really, really well and is one of the strongest parts because, again, going into 1666, I was not prepared for this franchise to get political. And then it really, really does, but is still managed to sort of smoothly transition back into the 1994 vibes. And I think a lot of lesser films would have stumbled at some point in that. And I don't think that this one does. But speaking of the transitioning to 1994, back half here, this gives us our conclusion to this overall narrative arc. Holly, is the 1994 part 2 stuff, does this give you a satisfying conclusion to that story? How do you think the plan plays out and all of that stuff?
I think it does. There are some things I would have liked to see. For
Hmm.
one, and I know it was also something that Shawnee brought up too. It would have been nice to see just more of the killers,
Yeah.
because they're saying, "Oh, all the killers are after us," and it's like, well, it's like 4 or 5 of them. If all of them were
Yep.
after you, you'd be dead, because there are like 300 of them.
And we would have had about 3 times the budget.
Yeah, but it would have been nice to see a few more killers, even ones that might be little like Easter eggs or something. To,
Hmm.
hey, here's the possibility of this universe and other movies that we could make. Here are these killers in the background that might not be as important, but you kind of want to know who they are.
Right.
Are you saying we should have had a crossover with Slappy the ventriloquist dummy from Goosebumps?
Yes. Yeah, just start putting the Goosebumps villains in there.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I would have liked to see something like that. I do think it's well done, and I will say my favorite character in this is Martin the janitor.
Martin is ah
He's fantastic.
when Dina and Josh drive up,
Yes.
he starts off like, because they're in a cop car, and he starts off like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And Josh is like, do you want to help us kill the sheriff? And he's just like, all right. Or he says like,
Let,
let me go get my
let me go get my coat.
yeah.
Yeah. Let me get my coat. Yeah.
It's really good.
No, I
Yeah.
think my favorite line is what is it? The okay, all right, high possessed white girl tied up.
Yes. Yep. He gives the sense of the Scream type of character that I think we lost in 1994 because Kate dies. Because Kate is kind of that character in
Yeah,
the first film, who is providing witty lines for laughs, a little bit Simon too, but a little bit less Simon too. So you do still need someone like that. And yeah, Martin gives
yeah,
that.
and it made sense for them to grab him because he was familiar with the mall, so he
Yeah,
was able to help them, and he had it out for the sheriff because
right.
yeah,
Deservedly
but
so.
but yeah, love Martin. I love the super soakers.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that, and I know this is just a cop thing, but like it bothered me that when the two security guards go up to them and they're like, "Put the weapons down," I'm like, "They're water guns, sir. They're
Right?
obviously like yellow and green neon water guns. Like they're not guns disguised as something else."
But also, that is, I mean, it can't be passed up the fact that these two cops are coming up to a queer woman and a black kid
Yeah.
and freaking out because that's happened in real life. And the person they approached, 50-50 odds on whether they're still around.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But it also works well as, again, you're right, kind of a almost humorous, ridiculous kind of notion. Works really well in both respects on that. But yeah, Elle, how did the 1994 part 2 play out for you? Was it satisfying for you? Was there anything you would have liked to have seen different, or did it pretty much hit the mark?
Yeah, I was satisfied to a point. And that point was when that book got taken at the end. It's like, okay, no, scrap that. I need the fourth movie. What's happening?
Okay, that's fair. Yep.
And as far as the plan goes, it's like take the killers that are there, replace them with Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern, and it's Home Alone.
Oh, very much so.
It is almost farcical for a slasher movie, I think. Like, even ones that go to comedic lengths to execute their plans. I'm thinking Nightmare on Elm Street. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how far do they go for this? Even the first one, it's like, all right, I'm going to go capture him in my dreams and bring him out, and you bonk him on the head, essentially.
Yep.
It's like, okay, that's a bit silly. But this is this is borderline cartoonish.
Little bit.
And I don't think it would have been as bad if not for the black light. Because that's like, oh, all this like neon colors and everything. It's like, this is Technicolor.
Right.
This is like 60s animation. You know, you're going to explode someone with a stick of dynamite and they're going to get accidental blackface.
I can see that. I had a weird first reaction to the fact that they were mixing in. And then I was like, two things. One, okay, I understand why, because visually it looks, I think, good for the most part. But also, B, it does keep it fun as opposed to, and it's something, yeah, more visually interesting than just, oh, look, you've got some red on you. But I can see also where, yes, that is very,
Yeah.
it's a particular vibe.
Yeah, Ruby Lane's going to get shot with a shotgun and her mouth's going to be on the back of her head. It just spins around. Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, it works, so hey, I can't complain.
Yeah, that's fair. I think overall, I think I like the ending. I think that it is good, not great. So for me, 1666 is great. Unequivocally, with the complaints that I've had, great. I think the back half of the 1994 part two is good, approaching great. Because while both parts individually work, I think it is a little bit of a tonal shift that threw me off the first time that I was watching it, and I was able to do better with it this time, but it's still quite a shift. I agree. It is a little bit Looney Tunes Home Alone-ish. That's fine for me. My bigger problem is twofold. One, again, poor Sam slash Hannah has nothing to do. Like, I am glad she got her paycheck for this, and she does a good job with what she has, but she is left to just snarl and struggle against binds, and then mostly chase when they get down into the tunnels. And that's a problem that I've had with that character in 1994 too. I don't think that she gets much to work with there. So that was kind of a glaring issue for me. The other one, and this is just to me, maybe I'm a bloodthirsty motherfucker, but I feel like I came into this knowing that probably nobody was going to die, and then nobody dies.
Except for like Nick.
Except for Nick. Like, none of our protagonists die. And it's a tough thing because I don't know who you would kill off. No, that's not true. I think it would be tragic. You could fucking kill Ziggy.
I just had that thought. Yeah.
Because
How would you do it?
how would I do it?
Yeah, if it was like you had the script as it is, and it's like, okay, director's note, we're killing off Ziggy. What do you write in?
I think there are multiple opportunities to kill her off. When she dumps the blood on Nick, she can die there. He can just straight up kill her. I think that when if you don't kill her in that exact moment, there's about a 10-15 minute sequence there where you can kill her off at literally any second because he's holding her hostage, and then she's running away, but she has Dina's blood on her. Like, there are so many opportunities. I think that the way that I would have it done is I would create a moment where she needs to protect Josh. Like, Josh gets cornered, something like that, by Ruby Lane. Actually, would probably be the best one. And I think Ziggy goes out there and sacrifices herself to save Josh because that provides a full circle thing from when Cindy sacrificed herself to try and save Ziggy, and Ziggy still died. So it gives her that thematic full circleness.
Yeah, because I was thinking it's like if you are going to kill off Ziggy, then having a last minute betrayal by Nick. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
yeah, it's like, okay, I swear I'm not going to kill anyone anymore. Please, I just need help. And in that moment of weakness, like she like drops the weapon, or like, that type of thing. Is like, okay, we can
Yep.
help you. Blam in the head.
That would
Just
also
something
work.
out of nowhere, like not even related to one of the supernatural killers.
That would work. My only issue with that is I would prefer a moment where Ziggy doesn't do something dumb. Ziggy takes agency and takes control of her character, because this is a character who has been hiding for the
Yeah,
last 16
yeah.
years.
That's why I would have it that sort of conflicted about doing it.
Yeah.
It's still like, no, you are still the morally correct character. You're kind and forgiving
Mm-hmm.
when he wouldn't be, and that's what does her in.
I could see either of those potentially working. I just, like I said, I went in when we got into 1994. I had a feeling that nobody was going to die, and thus the stakes felt weaker to me.
I do agree on that one. Now, I did think that they might be bringing in the janitor to off him.
That was also somebody that you could kill based on what this film was selling in terms of its sensibilities. I was moderately sure that they were not killing any of the black characters or any of the queer characters.
Mm.
And that was just my expectation because of how hard, particularly 1666, was leaning on that kind of stuff. And I'm glad that nobody died because I like all of the characters. But sometimes you do have to kill your darlings. Other than that, I think everything is pretty fun. I do like their plan. I think their plan is really effective and well thought out. Is it a little bit suspension of disbelief has to come into play that they can rig all of the doors and all of that in the amount of time that they have? Yes, but that's fine. I can suspend that disbelief. And yes, well, it is the most obvious, hey, there's more stuff coming down the line. I pop for the book being stolen.
When they left the book there, Shawnee was like shouting at the TV screen. It's like, don't leave it there. Get the book.
So that's my question. That place has clearly been police taped up. The police have investigated that place clearly because Nick was found.
Yeah.
Why did the cops leave the book?
Yeah.
That's evidence.
Oh, look, a satanic book. Just leave it there. Don't touch it.
Fine.
Or maybe they didn't leave it there.
Or maybe that. So here's my question. Who do you think took the book? Because it feels like before we get to that point, we do the drone shot of panning in on the mall. There is one particular character who is somebody I don't think we've previously seen. It is looks like a guy, a little bit bigger, and it does kind of seem to be following him without following him. And I was definitely looking at the hands. I'm not going to say that I paused when the hands grabbed the book, but I paused when the hands grabbed the book to see if I could get any details off those hands. They might fit him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely looked like the hands of a guy. Because I've heard some people predict that it's that girl, the girl that Josh talks to online that you see briefly at the end.
The Queen of
People
Air
have
and Darkness.
Yeah. People have theorized it's her, but those are not her hands.
No, 100% not. She is a young, fairly thin girl of the same age as Josh. No, those were adult man hands.
Yes.
Or at least they were presented as such. Different body types and stuff. But
I mean, maybe the mayor.
could be the mayor.
I was going to do a swing for the fans and say it's like the mayor's wife, like just out of nowhere. But now that Holly, you've mentioned it, I think it is that girl.
You think it's the girl?
Although the hands are different, who's to say there's no mind control already at play?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
If she's leaning into the whole, well, I am your queen, you serve me, go forth my minions, how do we know that isn't something that's happened?
That's also really fair.
Yeah, I know this is like a bit of a left field choice, but it's like, it would not surprise me if there is a Fear Street book that is something along those lines.
It would be a nice subtle play, one more Friday the 13th callback, because famously in Friday the 13th, spoilers for Friday the 13th, part 1, Pamela Voorhees is the killer, and when she gets beheaded at the end of the film, the hands that reach up to grab at the neck were actually Tom Savini's because he was doing the effects work. And it's very, very obviously not the actress who plays Pamela Voorhees' hands. So that could be just a fun callback to that. Or it could be us reading too much into it. One of the two. Probably not the latter, though. We wouldn't do that.
Yeah, we're always right.
Yes, absolutely. So let's go into our related recommendations for this. I will kick us off on this because I found it funny. If we didn't cover it 2 episodes ago, my related recommendation would have been The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Because the similarities are we've got a wrongfully accused witch horror that just shares a ton of DNA with this movie, albeit on a much smaller, more contained scale. At least, obviously, the 1666 part. Since we did cover that, I'm going to go with the obvious influence here for the 1666, which there's probably a couple influences you can say. You can say Witchfinder General. You can say even probably The Village a little bit, which is not a film that I love. I am going to go with The Witch, which is Robert Eggers' 2015 film starring Anya Taylor-Joy. It is set in New England in the 1630s. There's a very Puritan family who are sort of exiled from their community because they are a little bit extreme even for their Puritan settlement that they're with. And so they go live on a farmstead and bad things happen from there. I think 1666 conjures up a lot of the same vibes. Although in that film, there's no wrongfully accused character in The Witch. Well, no, that's not true. There is no wrongfully accused witch in that film who is actually a witch. Watch The Witch, you'll understand what I mean. Ollie, what is your recommendation?
I mean, I would agree on like The Village. Not that it's a good movie. One day, I would really just like to have an episode where we tear M. Night Shyamalan apart.
Uh-huh.
Verbally or
Either way.
The thing on that movie that I was, and one day when we do an M. Night Shyamalan, there will be like a deep dive. But he stole, no matter what anybody says, he stole that movie from a book that I read in middle school. And it got to the point that the author of the book was actually suing him. There was a lawsuit going on, but then something happened and it got dropped. Just like the other lawsuits against him on other authors who have tried to sue him for stealing their works.
Yep, I assume he pays him off.
Yes. Anyway, actual recommendation. Honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and say The Crucible.
That's really fair, and that 100%.
That's like the origin story of the origin story there.
Yep, yeah, very valid choice. Elle, how about you? What is your recommendation for people who vibed with this one?
I'm going to go a little bit more esoteric, I think.
Okay.
I would go with The Adventures of Alex Mack.
Okay. I vaguely know what this is.
Oh, I know what this is. I'm trying to connect the dots here.
It is almost a viewing of like a fear of power and like trying to keep
Okay.
things hidden. It gives me the same sort of vibes, I think, like looking at the 1666 part of this movie. It's like, I know it's completely out of left field, but it gives me the same, like, it fires the same synapses.
All right, fair enough.
But I would also pair that with a musical recommendation, and this is mostly for my own satisfaction, of Powerhouse by Raymond Scott. And if you don't
That
know
I
it,
am not familiar with.
I guarantee pretty much that you are. You just don't know it.
That's
it
also
is
probably fair.
a song that is in 2 parts, both of which have been used on Looney Tunes to indicate like machinery and like wackiness going on. So that
Okay.
and the
I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Yep.
it's that song. I just
Okay,
think that
fair enough.
that fits for the whole planning scene. As I said, it's fairly Looney Tunes fairly, Home Alone. It's like, yeah, listen to that song.
I love it. I have a tendency, obviously, to always go toward film and narrative stuff since we're talking about film and narrative stuff. But there is an artist. They are in regular rotation on my Spotify. Their name is Kiki Rockwell, and they do witch inspired songs. And they're all really, really good. And there's one that is called Same Old Energy. Look it up, Kiki Rockwell, Same Old Energy. It could have very well been the 1666 theme song in a lot of ways. So yeah, no, legit.
Yeah, because I mean, hell yeah, let's do whatever is
Yeah,
like something that fits with it. Because I've already covered books a couple times,
absolutely.
and hell, if we got music, yeah, go for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so let's wrap up this trilogy looking at the series as a whole. What do we think of it as a whole narrative, and how cohesive do we think it is as a full story? Holly, how about you? How does this, like, if you're binging it all the way through, how does it work as one sort of straight through story?
Works great according to Shawnee, who did, like, I mean, we watched what, two of them in 1 week and then one like the week before that.
Right.
And yeah, I was watching them as they aired, and I
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I love the way that they were released, where it was like a week apart and one just flowed into another, and I really hope they do this again. And I honestly think they should do this with more movies.
I don't disagree.
I love that there was the overall story that was connecting all of them.
Yep, for sure. Elle, how about you? How does this is a lot of movie?
Mm. But also not too much of a movie either.
Yeah, fair. How does it work for you as an overall storyline and film experience?
It, like Holly said, it works. It does what it sets out to do, and
Hmm.
pretty much nails the landing. The only issue I had with it from a narrative sense is that during the aftermath of 78, like when it's back and they're like, wait, you're Ziggy? The clocks in the background are at different times. They'll be at 11:48 and they'll cut away and then cut back supposedly like a minute later and suddenly it's like 1:13. It's like,
Right.
oh, come on, guys. If you're going to have clocks, at least try.
It's fair. That's fair.
And it's such a minor nitpick that it amuses me that this is my issue.
I mean, there are 100% little things like that that I see in particular movies. God forbid if anybody's in a bar drinking in a film. Because when that level of alcohol in that glass goes up and down and up and down and up and down, it drives me nuts.
Mm.
Shouldn't bother me because I should be able to look past it, but I always see it and it always gets me.
Like, you think I would have built up a thicker skin to that type of thing watching anime,
Right.
but apparently not.
Fair.
But I did, and like I watched it like sequentially as they were releasing as well.
Hmm.
Apparently, I at the very least I did it the one a week. So if I did that
Right.
independently, I'd be surprised. But the for this reviewing, I literally sat down and binged all three back to back just to see what that would do.
Hmm.
And yeah, no, it works just as well.
Nice. Yeah. I am particularly impressed because, like, Lee Janiak and her co-writers, Kyle Killen and Jack Graziade, they give themselves quite a challenge because we are talking about one story that is homaging Scream and the 90s, and then Friday the 13th and the 1970s, and then witch films in general and the 1600s before hopping back into the 90s. That's setting yourself up to fail, and yet they pull it off. And that is impressive to me. Obviously, I have my little quibbles here and there as I've talked about. But on the whole, I think this is an incredibly successful trilogy, single storyline trilogy. I agree. I really liked it. Was a brilliant move by Netflix to give the three films a theme, the Summer of Fear marketing tagline, release them one week after another. Unfortunately, I would not be surprised if they don't do that anytime again soon, because that also came towards the end of pandemic lockdown period when people were just desperate for anything to watch. And so I don't know if they would have the impetus to do that, particularly in the summertime when they're going to be going up against Marvel films and DC films and Mission Impossible and whatever other huge franchise stuff that they're going to be competing with.
I mean, I think they're in with a better shot now than they would have been, judging by recent entries into those particular franchises.
Probably.
Especially now because like I've noticed Summerween has like become a thing.
Yes, that is true.
They had like a
Yeah.
festival down the street from me the other week where it was like alcohol and horror stuff. And
Nice.
they said it was the beginning of Summerween.
We're horror fans. We will take any opportunity. Halfway to Halloween, Summerween,
Christmasween.
Christmasween. It's Valentine's Day. Let's watch Hard Eyes.
St. Patrick's Day. Let's binge Leprechaun.
Yeah. It's President's Day. I'm sure there's something we can
Abraham
watch
Lincoln
there.
Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, Abe Lincoln Vampire Slayer. It's Columbus Day. Let's find another holiday to celebrate because fuck Columbus.
I was waiting on that one. Okay.
One really quick question I had. The film trilogy is great. I think we all like it. Would this have been better as a Netflix series? Elle, what do you think? Do you think that...
No.
Okay.
Just if it had been a TV series, I think they would have tried to put a bit too much influence into it. And it's the same thing as sort of saying with Marvel, where it's like, yeah, it's Bad Boys 2.
Okay.
They're just doing that again, but with different costumes.
Oh, fair.
Yeah, but with the Fear Street TV series, it's like you have enough content to cover a good 6 episodes. You're making a tolerable 12, maybe.
Right.
The rest of it is unnecessary padding and filler to try and promote to the general public that has no idea what they actually like because it turns out to be bad. So I think going with just the 3 films, get it as good as it needs to be, if not better.
Okay.
You don't lower yourself just to get the TV series title.
That's fair. Holly, what about you? What do you think? Would a TV series adapting these 3 films into...
No, don't touch these movies. No.
Okay.
No.
Fair enough.
Feelings?
Fair enough.
Nope. They're perfect as they are. Don't harm them.
That is absolutely fair. I was thinking when I thought about this, I'm not saying turn each movie into its own 8 episodes or 6 episodes or something like that. But like do it UK TV style where like instead of one movie, instead of 3 movies, you get like
4 episodes and then it's canceled
Yeah.
forever.
No.
Well,
No.
that's fair. I would say on Netflix, it would have at least had a chance to run through all 3 of them. But you guys make valid points.
Sorry, I have strong feelings.
No, that's fine. I enjoy that. Yeah, fair enough. All right, so really quick, for these 3 films, just give me a couple of standout moments, like the moments that really truly stick with you. Holly, which are the ones that really stand out for you?
The ending with the water guns.
Okay.
The fight with Tommy, with Carry On, My Wayward Son playing over the speakers. That one's a big one, and I'm picking one from each. Kate and the bread maker.
The bread slicer, yep.
Not maker. Sorry. They didn't bake her into bread. No.
I was going to say, do not eat that bread.
Sorry.
That bread has gone bad. No, you're good.
No, not cannibal. Yeah, bread slicer.
Yep. No, that is the go-to, I think, for that one. Elle, how about you? Give us your 3 top moments or sequences from this trilogy.
The big killer free for all in the trilogy, like the last one, where they're just all going at each other.
Yep.
Mhm.
Battle Royal.
It's a different movie.
I was thinking the wrestling style, but yeah, fair.
I do hope we get to see that movie with this.
We will. Oh, we will be covering that at some point.
For 78, not specifically like any of the fighting, but just the moment where he goes up to like the kid with the glasses and it's just like a Tommy is just that
Oh,
that's a bit chilling, that moment. It's
uh-huh.
such a subtle little moment, but just the oh shit.
Yeah, because that is, I believe, the first kid that Tommy kills.
Yeah, but just the fact it's like it is so like not obvious to anyone else that something is wrong.
Right.
Just to add to that, he says Counselor Tommy, which I mean that just adds to that in my opinion.
Mm.
It is the Anakin youngling scene.
Yes.
He killed the younglings. I know that like he's meant to be sort of heartbroken saying that, but he's
Right.
laughing and it's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
And what's
uh,
your third one?
and then yeah, for 1994 for the first one, legitimately like the brawl between the football teams,
Yeah.
because that to me is like there is this inherent built-in tension.
Yep.
Like it is inescapable, regardless of what other supernatural stuff may or may not happen as I'm watching this movie. This is always in the background.
Legit. Mine are going to be, I will also, for continuity's sake, pick one from each. Starting with, I'm going to start with the first that comes to mind, and it is perhaps my favorite moment, other than the bread slicer, which I will pick something different for 1994. But other than the bread slicer, this is probably the moment that sticks with me the most out of this entire franchise. And it is the death of Cindy and Ziggy at the end of 1978.
Mhm.
Because I was not, yet we had the bread slicer moment. We had Tommy murking kids off screen. I was not prepared for the brutality of that moment and the way it was depicted, because that was, we give no fucks. This is what's happening. Deal with it.
Yeah, it was almost like the heroic last stand, except it also didn't work, so there's another one on the
Right.
other side.
Yep. For 1994, 1994 is a little bit tougher for me. I am going to go with, because it is the needle drop film, I am going to go with the needle drop into the needle drop into the needle drop of Machine Head as they enter the high school into Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover, as Josh sees Kate, into Sour Times by Portishead, because Dina is alone and sad and bitter. Like that sets the tone for that entire film. And then for 1666, legitimately my favorite moment of that movie is Dina slash Sarah's speech to Solomon just before she's hanged, where she curses him. Because I love Kiana Madera's performance throughout this entire franchise. That is her highlight reel moment right there, because she nails it perfectly. She nails the righteous anger, the determination, and gets at the strength that I think is what connects Sarah and Dina as characters. And even though you know that, look, Sarah's about to die, nothing's going to save her, because we know how how that part of the story ends already. It's still kind of a fist pumping moment, and that's hard to pull off. So that's my 1666 moment.
I do remember a little bit of trivia from when I was looking this stuff up for 66. So, in the original books, from what I've been able to find, the original Fear family got a couple of the good family burned as witches, like falsely. And then it's the equivalent of Solomon that puts a curse of bad luck, because he's also a witch, on the Fear family in perpetuity.
Interesting.
So
Huh.
you get similar kind of things where it's like, no, he's actually also like, got powers, but it's about it in a different way. Because then though that original Fear family then like procreates and mixes, and it ends up
Right.
being bloodline throughout most of the town of Shadyside, because it is still in the books.
Yep.
So they are still having this evil curse put upon them.
I kind of like the way the movie does it better,
Mm.
but that's just because I want to sympathize with the witch always. But yeah, so final assessment of this third film. Elle, where are you going with this one?
I I thought it was the weakest of the three,
Mm-hmm.
but not by much. Like it was still good, ironically.
Right. Yeah. Good without the E.
Yeah, because it's not for everyone. It's R-rated. Uh,
Yep.
but yeah, it's like it wasn't as strong as the first one for me, but
Okay.
I still liked it. So I think I'll go with 3.5 mole assaults out of 5.
Makes sense. Holly, how about you?
I think this is my second favorite one, and it's because I think this one is just so much fun. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
it may have its issues, but it's so much fun, and it does tie everything together. And I think I would give it 3.5 blood-filled super soakers out of 5.
Nice. I am on the same. I am on the same wavelength. I think 1978 is my favorite, like without question.
Mhm.
I think it is the most effective by far. I don't know whether I would put 66 or 94 next, but I think this is very effective in what it does. I think it is the most thematically rich of the three. If the part two had been a little bit stronger, this might have been my favorite, but I still do really enjoy it. And I'm giving it 3.5 creepily murdered eyeless children out of 5. So we have something big coming up next week as Fear Street Prom Queen arrives. So my first question is, I assume this is the case, but maybe not. Have you guys seen the trailer already? And what do you think of it? Holly?
So, I've seen the early promo trailer, which isn't a full
Mm-hmm.
trailer.
Right.
I don't want to watch the full trailer because I know so many of them spoil the movie, and I want to go into it without being fully spoiled on anything.
That is absolutely fair. I know a lot of people who are like that, so for sure. Al, how about you? Have you seen the trailer?
I have seen that it got linked and posted around the internet. I have not watched it.
Okay.
Similar reasons where it's like trailers don't do a good job of not putting the best bits of the movie in there and ruining it for everything else later. So I was just like, I already have my pass. Like I've got front row tickets. I don't need to see it. I'm already going.
That is fair.
Mhm.
I have seen it. I like it. I think it has a lot of the right vibes. I will say this one doesn't. I think is an effective trailer in that it gives us an idea of the story, which is valuable for those who haven't read the book. This is based on, best of my knowledge, one of the actual Fear Street books called The Prom Queen, I believe. So it gives us the basics of the story, but I don't think it spoils anything. And it actually had me feeling a little bit better about the movie, which I was excited for regardless. But I did have some, I won't say concerns, but trepidation that it might not be able to match the level of the trilogy. And those are somewhat alleviated. So the next and last question with this that I have is, what are you hoping to see out of this film? Because I know I have one very specific thing that I want to see. Holly, is there anything in specific that you are looking for from this beyond just a good movie?
A good movie, really. I was worried I was going to build up my hopes too much. And so then, like Shawnee had said, we'll try not to hope specifically
Right.
for things and just enjoy it. So, like, I'm
That's
kind of
fair.
trying to go in like that. But at the same time, I'd like some callbacks
Yep.
to the original trilogy that we've seen. And I'm sure there will be. And the other thing I would like a good twist, one that cannot immediately be predicted.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are my main ones.
Legit. Elle, how about you? Is there anything that you're particularly hoping or expecting to see out of Prom Queen?
Uh, I hope that I get a better understanding of what the hell a prom is. Because we don't have that here. We have similar things, but not exactly, best I can tell. Um,
Right.
I I would like a teaser for what the next film is. Like not like a cliffhanger setup type of thing. It's just like a little sprinkling in the background to lead the people who are into that kind of thing to pick out out of the series of 100 and something books that got written of Fear Street. What are the top three most likely to tie in as a reference?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. It's like give me some breadcrumbs to keep me like interested.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the biggest thing is what I would want to see is a way to ruin someone's high school experience that isn't Carrie.
It's interesting that you say that. Valid point. So I have the main thing that I'm looking for is like Holly. I want to see callbacks. I want to see Mary Lane. She's been in every film so far. She's the one character outside of Dina, but Dina's not going to be in this one unless there's a little 8-year-old Dina running around. But that is one of Mary and possibly Nick, maybe Cindy, but I'm not expecting to see or Ziggy, sorry. I'm not expecting to see Ziggy in this because Ziggy is off in her home, boarded up at this point. I want to see what some of the characters, they don't have to be the focus and they shouldn't be the focus, but what some of the characters that we saw from 1978 are doing now who survived. The other thing, and the reason why I said I think that's interesting, this is a 1980s prom set movie. If we don't get some Carrie references, I will be disappointed. It is obvious and it is the cheap way to do it, but I want it. It's okay to give the audience what they want, or the obvious thing sometimes. But yeah, beyond that, just a fun slasher, good twist, decent 80s production value. That's all I need. Just give me fun and I'll be happy. But yeah, so that is Fear Street 66 and our wrap up of the trilogy as a whole. Next week, as I said, we will be covering Fear Street Prom Queen. You can find us at whatever podcatcher you prefer. We are on Blue Sky and Instagram at Final Ghouls Pod.
If your podcatcher of choice allows you to rate and review, do so. We'd like that. 5 stars is great, but as long as you put anything, we'll read it. So at least don't make us sad.
Please don't. Meanwhile, you can find me at J Thomas for Mania on Blue Sky and Letterboxd.
You can find me at shards@kind.social on Mastodon and Shards System on Letterboxd.
You can find me at Holly Culp on Blue Sky and at Miniature Magic 18 on Instagram.
And you can find us all playing role-playing games at Final Show Films on Twitch and YouTube. And Elle, give us our horror book survival guide tip of the episode.
Your tip to survive for this episode is if a small town off the highway seems deserted, it's probably for a very good reason.